And when it comes to communication, just because you speak the same language as the other people do, it doesn't really mean that you will have an easy way to communicate with everyone. And therefore, many cases in many communities, there are conflicts because people often are not on the same page. They don't talk about exactly the same thing, even though they think they are. And then some of the conversations sometimes become a little bit heated. So it's not that easy to navigate talking to a group of people, especially if they are strangers. And I must tell you, if you don't have the experience yet, whether you're working with an open source community or a team within a company, this experience is practically the exact same. There are always conflicts that are often hard to resolve, especially if no one really has good communication skills and experience. I had the opportunity to talk to Daniel Stenberg. He's been maintaining the Curl project for over 30 years. Yes, you heard that right. Curl is over 3 decades old. It's celebrating its anniversary this year in 2026. It is really exciting. If you haven't seen the episode with Daniel yet, then please and go and check it out right now, right away. It's a great episode. And in this segment that I chose for the season finale is a segment where Daniel and I talk about communication, because being the leader and one of the core maintainers of an open source project for 30 years, that means that Daniel has been doing something right in terms of how to communicate with people, newcomers and other folks who became maintainers over time, to be able to maintain and keep the project thriving. And I learned a lot of good practices from Daniel in this little segment. And now I'm very excited that you get to learn some tips and tricks yourself as well. Did you ever have any particular methods or practices or ways of communicating when you encountered any conflict in the community, or was it always situational and specific to the conversation that people were having?
I've not had a lot of that. As a talking about leading by example, I one of the things, for example, I often just try to do when it comes to communication about the project is often just to talk about we instead of I or you. When we do things in the project, what do we want it to do, and what is our work is doing, and that I think is really helpful because it also makes it a us problem and not a you or it's not an individual contributor here. So it's not your problem is this when you're a contributor is our problem, because it's actually a problem for the project, right? It's not the single contributor. And I think that is often helps because it's sort of it takes away the focus on the individual actually working on the problem right now, because it's actually not that person's problem. Maybe again, if it's something we do to improve the project, it's actually not anyone's individual problem. It's a challenge for the project, right? For all of us, whoever that is. I mean, at least more than one. Anyone who cares about the project. So, and I think that is often helpful, because then it also makes you feel as part of it, right? It's not and not singled out or blamed as an individual. So that is one way I often try to when I do communication myself. Even though it might be me writing it and me, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to do everything along the way. But I find it much better to talk about us, we, and our things rather than my patch and my fix and my thoughts here, because it makes it much better. I don't know. It sounds much better in when everyone sort of then it's us, then it's in the big team, not otherwise.
So by shifting from I to we, it sounds like that you're sort of intentionally shifting a conversation towards this community mindset and the common goal
Yeah, it's a
mindset.
little bit like you said, exactly. It's a subtle way to just shift it towards what we're all working for rather than individual differences.
I love that. I'm gonna try that too. And we'll see how that works with the communities that I work with.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's actually kind of fun because when someone introduces it, starts a discussion, or you join the discussion when people are talking about my stuff, your stuff, it actually shifts the conversation pretty nicely when you talk about suddenly you enter the discussion and you talk about our stuff or we should do this or because then you join them and suddenly take sides or go over to their side perhaps and it's our problem now, we should fix it like this, or I think we should do it or whatever. So I think it's a pretty good way to do it. Of course it doesn't work always, and
But it sounds like you have good experiences with this method, and it seems like that it either resolved or prevented heated conversations that you were involved in.
yes, I think so, but I think also there are many different things that makes it work. I also often just dive in, if we discuss something, perhaps maybe I'll just, jump in and let's make a test version. I can just make my approach in code or whatever, show everyone or something, because sometimes it becomes too much talking and maybe too theoretical too. So sometimes it's better to just, well, we go with one way and we try that. And because very often it doesn't matter, even if you debate something, way A or way B, which is the best. And then in the end, whatever version you do, it's not going to be like A or B in the end anyway, because once you have that version, you start to realize, wait a minute, this is not ideal. We should also polish it a little bit, and we should add this little tweak and maybe pull that back a little bit. So we will end up with something A, B, C like anyway in the end. So sometimes it's better to just go with one of them, take the next step, and then iterate from that, because that's how we do it anyway. And we're just going to constantly iterate over time until the end of days anyway.
So it sounds like that sustaining a nice welcoming environment, it's important to use an inclusive language. And also, it sounds like it's a good way to keep up that environment to be action oriented. And I remember at one point you were saying that the spec and the actual code and how it works, they usually deviate. So it also sounds like that if people can have a rough consensus that the idea is not bad, then after that point, it's probably better to start working on it and seeing how it works and
Absolutely.
tweak it rather than argue on the spec forever until it reads
It's
perfect.
more like if no one is violently against it, then you can move forward. And also talking about the inclusive language and everything. I think in a world with so many open source projects and only so many developers in the world, it's a rough competition for developers, right? So it's important to make your corner of the world feel somewhat comfortable and fun, right? Because again, people would just leave and find another open source project instead if you make it a hostile or otherwise bad place to be. So you want it to feel good. And I want it too, right? I don't want to be part of a team where people are unpleasant towards each other. So
I really loved the technique where Daniel said that it really made a difference to switch the language and the way how he communicated from I to we, like how we are going to solve something, or this is our problem and not just my problem, and this is what I want, and this is what I want to do, or I will do, or this is the problem I need to be solved. Because once you start talking about things as a we problem or something that we need to solve, then you're starting to reinforce the thought in others that this project that you're all working on is everybody's project, and it's everybody's priority to maintain and shape and improve it moving forward.